Samuel Creighton owned 1,100 acres of grassland in the Prescott Valley. He had water, timber, cattle, and more money than any single man in Yavapai County needed. What he did not have was a reason to care about any of it. When the town council asked if anyone would donate land for a schoolhouse, Samuel stood up and said, "Take the acre by Granite Creek. It's flat, it's close, and I'm not using it." He did not donate the land because he cared about education. He donated it because he wanted the meeting to end so he could go home. 6 months later, a woman named Ada Whitmore walked onto that acre with 12 students, a box of chalk, and a purpose so clear it could cut glass. Samuel Creighton had given away an acre of dirt. Ada Whitmore was about to show him what it was actually worth. Samuel Creighton was 41 years old and had been successful at everything he had ever attempted except being happy. He had come to Arizona Territory from Virginia in 1870 with a cavalry discharge, a modest inheritance, and the vague idea that a man could start clean in a place where nobody knew his name. He bought land when land was cheap. He raised cattle when cattle were profitable. He expanded when other men retreated and held when other men sold. By 1886, he was the wealthiest rancher in the Prescott Valley. He had a 2-story house with a wraparound porch. He had a foreman, 8 hands, and a cook. He had everything a man of his era was supposed to want. He also had a stillness inside him that his money could not fill. His wife, Catherine, had died of cholera in 1878. They had been married for 3 years. They had no children. After Catherine died, Samuel sealed off the upstairs bedroom and never opened it again. People in Prescott called him generous because he donated to the church and paid his men fairly. They were not wrong. But Samuel's generosity was the generosity of a man who did not care enough about money to hold on to it. He gave because giving was easier than deciding what to keep. The acre by Granite Creek was the smallest gift he had ever given. He did not think about it after the meeting. He did not visit the site when the schoolhouse was built. He did not attend the opening ceremony. He heard about the new teacher the way everyone in Prescott heard about everything. At the general store, from men who had opinions about women and education and the intersection of the two. They said she was from Pennsylvania. They said she was young. They said she had ideas. Samuel did not ask what kind of ideas. He went home, ate supper alone, and sat on his porch, looking at 1,100 acres that meant nothing to him. Ada Whitmore was 27 years old and had been angry for most of her adult life. Not the screaming kind of angry, the quiet kind. The kind that comes from being smart in a world that does not want smart women, from being ambitious in a country that tells women their ambition should fit inside a kitchen, and from watching her younger brothers receive the education she wanted while she was taught to sew. She had educated herself. She read every book in her father's library in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. She read the ones he told her were not for women twice. She passed the teaching examination at the top of her class and was offered a position in a one-room school in a territory most people could not find on a map. She took it because Arizona Territory was 2,400 miles from her father's opinion, and that distance was worth more than any salary. Ada arrived in Prescott in April of 1886 with 2 trunks, one containing clothes and one containing books. The book's trunk was heavier. She walked onto the donated acre by Granite Creek and saw a schoolhouse that had walls, a roof, and nothing else. No desks, no slate, no books, no maps. The town had built the building and assumed that the building was enough. Ada did not complain. She made desks from lumber she requested from the sawmill. She made a chalkboard from a pine plank painted with a mixture of egg white and charcoal. She wrote to every publisher in the country and asked for donated textbooks. 7 publishers sent books. Ada wrote each of them a thank you letter in handwriting, so beautiful it was practically calligraphy. Samuel Creighton rode past the schoolhouse in May on his way to check fence line. He had not visited since the donation. He heard singing, 12 children's voices, singing a song he did not recognize, led by a woman's voice that carried across the creek like something physical. He stopped his horse. He sat in the saddle and listened, and for reasons he could not have explained to anyone, he felt the stillness inside his chest shift. Not break, not open, just move slightly, like a door that has been painted shut and feels the first pressure of a hand. He did not dismount. He did not introduce himself. He listened to the singing and then rode on. That evening, he asked his foreman, "The school teacher, what's her name?" The foreman said, "Whitmore, Ada Whitmore. She's already upset 3 members of the town council because she's teaching the Mexican children alongside the white ones." Samuel said, "Is that so?" He did not say anything else. But the next morning he rode past the schoolhouse again, and the morning after that. What Samuel did not know was that Ada had already noticed the man on the bay horse who stopped every morning to listen. And what she noticed next, what started appearing at the schoolhouse without explanation, is where this story changes from a donation into something else entirely. One morning in June, Ada arrived at the schoolhouse and found a box on the step. Inside were 24 slate pencils, a ream of paper, and a world map printed on canvas. There was no note. Ada hung the map on the wall. She distributed the pencils. She did not know who had left the box, but she suspected. Because only one person in Prescott had both the means and the motive to donate supplies to a school he had already donated land for. In July, a man arrived at the schoolhouse with a wagon load of lumber. He said, "Mr. Creighton sent me. He says the children need proper benches." Ada watched the benches being built. They were well made, sanded smooth, the right height for children, with backs that supported small spines during long arithmetic lessons. Whoever had specified them understood that children needed to be comfortable to learn. She sent a note to the Creighton ranch. "Mr. Creighton, the benches are excellent. You should come see them." Samuel did not come, but the gifts did not stop. In August, a stove arrived. Not a cheap pot-belly stove, but a proper cast-iron heating stove that would keep the schoolhouse warm through an Arizona mountain winter. With it came 3 cords of split firewood stacked beside the building by men who said only, "Mr. Creighton." Ada sent a second note, "Mr. Creighton, you have furnished a schoolhouse without once stepping inside it. I am beginning to think you are either very generous or very afraid of children. You are welcome to visit and determine which." Samuel read the note 3 times. He smiled. He had not smiled at a piece of paper in 8 years. He came on a Friday afternoon. He dismounted, removed his hat, and stood in the doorway of the schoolhouse he had paid for and furnished and never seen. 12 children looked at him. Ada looked at him. She said, "Children, this is Mr. Creighton. He gave us the land, the benches, the stove, the supplies, and the map. What do we say?" 12 voices said, "Thank you, Mr. Creighton." Samuel stood in the doorway and felt 12 small voices hit him like 12 small hammers on the door he had painted shut 8 years ago. The paint cracked. The door did not open, but the crack was visible. He said, "You're welcome." Ada said, "Would you like to stay? We are reading Robinson Crusoe. We could use a man's voice for the shipwreck scene." Samuel stayed. He read the shipwreck scene. His voice was rough and unpracticed, and absolutely perfect for a storm at sea. The children were riveted. Ada watched him from her desk and saw something she had not expected to see in a wealthy, quiet rancher. A man who was desperately lonely and did not know how to say so. He came back the next Friday, and the Friday after that. But the gift that changed everything, the one that cracked the door open for good, came in October. And it was not something Samuel gave to the school. It was something Ada gave to him. In October, one of Ada's students, a 9-year-old Mexican boy named Tomás Herrera, stopped coming to school. Ada rode to the Herrera homestead and found the family in crisis. Tomás's father had broken his leg in a horse accident. The family needed Tomás to work. School was a luxury they could not afford. Ada went to Samuel, not to the ranch, to the general store where she knew he bought supplies on Thursdays. She stood in front of him and said, "I need your help, not money, not supplies." She told him about Tomás. She told him that a 9-year-old boy who could read at an adult level and do multiplication in his head was going to lose his education because his father could not work. She said, "You have 8 men working your ranch. Send one to the Herrera place for 2 months. Let Tomás come back to school." Samuel looked at her. He said, "That's not how ranching works." "I can't spare a man," Ada said. "You have 1,100 acres and 1 life. Tomás has nothing and his entire future. You can spare a man. You just haven't decided to." Nobody talked to Samuel Creighton like that. Nobody in Prescott had the nerve or the standing. But Ada Whitmore had the nerve because she did not care about his money. And she had the standing because she was the only person in the valley who had looked at his generosity and seen it for what it was. A man writing checks because writing checks was easier than showing up. Samuel sent a man to the Herrera ranch. Tomás came back to school, but something else happened. Samuel started visiting the Herrera place himself. He checked on the leg. He brought food. He sat on the porch and drank coffee with a man he had never spoken to despite living 6 miles away for 16 years. When he came back from one of these visits, he stopped at the schoolhouse. It was evening. The children were gone. Ada was grading papers by lamplight. He stood in the doorway and said, "You were right. I could spare a man. I had 8, and I was still alone. The Herreras have nothing and their house is full." Ada looked up from her papers. She said, "It is not the house that is full, Mr. Creighton. It is the people in it." Samuel said, "Samuel." Ada said, "Samuel." He sat down. She poured coffee from the pot she kept on the stove he had given her. They talked until the lamp burned low. Not about the school, not about the ranch, about Catherine, about Ada's father, about the distance between generosity and presence, and how a man could cross 1,100 acres every day and still be standing still. When he left, Ada said, "You gave us an acre, but you did not give us yourself. The children would like that. I would like that." Samuel rode home in the dark and felt the door inside his chest swing open. Samuel Creighton did not propose to Ada Whitmore with a ring. He proposed with a building. In November of 1886, he hired a crew to expand the schoolhouse. He doubled its size. He added a second room, a small library, and a covered porch where the children could eat lunch when the weather was good. He paid for everything himself, and he did not send a foreman. He came every day. He carried lumber. He hammered nails. He worked alongside men he employed, and when the children arrived in the mornings, he was already there, covered in sawdust, looking happier than anyone in Prescott had ever seen him. Ada watched this happen and understood what it meant. A man who gave money was writing checks. A man who gave time was writing something else. On the day the expansion was finished, Samuel stood in the new library, empty shelves, fresh wood smell, light from windows he had measured himself, and said to Ada, "I built this for the school." Ada said, "I know." Samuel said, "I also built it because I wanted a reason to be here every day, and I have run out of rooms to add." Ada said, "There are other reasons to be here every day." Samuel said, "Is that an answer?" Ada said, "That is an invitation to ask the question," he asked. She said yes. They were married on January 10, 1887, in the schoolhouse on the Acre by Granite Creek. The ceremony was performed by the Prescott circuit preacher. The witnesses were 12 students, including Tomás Herrera, who read a poem he had written for the occasion in English and Spanish. Samuel opened the upstairs bedroom in his house for the first time in 8 years. He and Ada moved in together. The room smelled like dust and cedar in the past, and Ada opened the windows and let the Arizona air replace all of it. Samuel and Ada Creighton ran the Prescott Valley Ranch for 31 years. Ada taught at the school for 22 of those years. They had 3 children. The school grew to 47 students. Tomás Herrera graduated, attended the University of Arizona, and became a teacher himself. Samuel never stopped giving, but the gifts changed. They were no longer boxes left on doorsteps. They were ours, presents. Fridays in the schoolhouse reading to children who called him Mr. Creighton and meant it as a title of affection, not formality. Ada once told a friend, "Samuel gave me an acre. I gave him a reason to stand on it." He died in 1917. She died in 1928. They are buried side by side in the Prescott Cemetery, 50 yards from the Acre by Granite Creek, where it all began. If this story stayed with you, tell me, what is the difference between giving money and giving yourself? And if you want another story about the frontier's quiet loves, it's right here.